All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking about Makima versus Gojo. Now, these are pretty much the peaks of their respective verses, and what we're going to see is a matchup between these two, as Makima is obviously a villain, and Gojo is obviously one of the main protagonists of JJK. So, in this video, what we're going to explore are both of these characters' abilities, their stats, and their win cons to see how each of them stacks up with respect to each other, and how they're going to go about trying to defeat one another. Now, this is obviously a matchup that's been touted for a while. It's not one that I particularly find very interesting, but we are going to go ahead and explain it because I thought it's one that's at least worth fleshing out just a bit. So, the first person we're going to have up is Makima, and her abilities seem to be something like a very clear control mechanism. And what she does is control other characters in her verse. Now, we know in Chainsaw Man, there are distinct devils that each have their own abilities based on the specific fear they incite in people. And the strength of their abilities, of course, is directly correlated to the ability or the manifestation of fear, which means however much people fear them, for how long they fear them, and the specific number of people that fear them, right? So essentially, more fear over a long period of time by more people is what makes a devil in Chainsaw Man as powerful as they are. All right. So things like pricking your finger obviously aren't going to be as fearful as fires or falling, right? And so Makima is what they call the control devil. So in this verse, she is again just one of the most powerful devils because she has such a primal fear backing her. So her ability reflects that pretty directly. Makima essentially just allows herself to control others, but her control is limited to other people and if she feels they're inferior to her. So if she does feel that someone's inferior to her, she will go ahead and essentially have almost instant control over them. Now, this hack does seem to be kind of broken, but it obviously has upper limits. She has to use different movements, mechanisms to like try and control people. So one thing she does is a finger like gunshot. And so that allows her to move and break and manipulate people's body parts or control their body parts based on where she points it, or uses other twisting or different types of movements to control their bodies in specific ways. Now, another way that she also controls people is with her ability to straight up use sacrifices and just go ahead and twist and contort people's bodies from long range. But this requires prep time. So in this fight, where they're starting under specifically standard battle assumptions, she wouldn't have the prep time to go ahead and just twist someone's body and contort it in a way that would allow her to essentially insta kill them or sniper shot them from a long way because she doesn't have that prep time, she won't have the extra bodies to sacrifice, and she just won't have the ability to go ahead and do this all while Gojo just sits there, right? That'd be a bit unfair. So, my question here would be what is the upper limit of this character in Chainsaw Man? And it isn't very promising, right? So, if her ability works on the idea that she is essentially superior to someone, she's not superior to Gojo in any way. He beats her in pretty much everything. He's the peak of his verse. He's that guy and has been for like a decade, right? So, if that's the case, she has no way to use her abilities on him. She can't control Gojo, and it might come into question whether she considers herself superior. But as far as verse to verse matchup, he's the pinnacle outside of maybe Sakuna, right? But she's not even top two in her verse. Um, so if that's the case, it may not be that way as far as her abilities, right? And so without her abilities, all she has is her base stats. And in Chainsaw Man, they're pretty weak, man. They straight up go from Gun Devil ranking at the end of part one, and that's maybe bullet speed if you want to grant them like the highest speed you can give them. As far as AP, her hand to hand is like maybe peak human to, and if you want to wank her, building level at most. So she doesn't really have any stats for the most part, and without her ability, she's pretty much useless. So as far as Makima, I don't think she really stands a chance against Gojo. Now we're gonna go ahead and look at Gojo, and most people are pretty much familiar with his abilities as they're some of the highest touted in anime and manga. Now he has the Infinity, of course. Makima can't break through this. She has no way to straight up get through Infinity. So even if Gojo just sat there, she wouldn't get through it, right? He'd just be all right, and at worst would be a stalemate. What we also have is Gojo going and using his abilities, right? The red would straight up rip Makima apart. Blue would give him high speed to punch and beat up Makima. Um, and those are just his baseline abilities, right? If he goes on to use Hollow Purple, it's existence erasure. And we've seen it on characters that scale at least to multi building level. So in that case, he would just straight up shoot through her and she wouldn't have anything to respond with. But he also has his speed, and we can kind of move on to his stats to see even without his abilities, he does kind of just beat her up even that way. And this is all excluding domain, which I'll use as his last win con. But his speed is, it's in the mocks, right? It's faster than Naobito, faster than Maki or Toji, and they react to mock speeds as well as Naoya, who likely isn't faster than Gojo either, who reaches a few Mach speeds, right? And that's way faster than anything we've seen in Chainsaw Man. And so if Gojo has this kind of speed, he's gonna blitz Makima. But even more so, his AP is at least building level to multi building level. So he also just one shots her there too. Um, Now we can go into domain, but as far as this versus matchup, Gojo doesn't really need it. Gojo has the ability, and it's pretty much clear to use domain and just flood her mind with info to the point she dies. She straight up just has like a contusion or just loses her ability to think altogether, and then Gojo just one shots her, or kicks her over, right? In that case, she can't escape his domain, right? She's not powerful enough, so she loses in that way too. So there's really not much of a matchup. Makima gets violated in every way, in every ability that Gojo has. And so it's pretty much a one shot and blitz. Anyone trying to say otherwise, I'm really skeptical because she doesn't have anything that puts her anywhere near Gojo level. And so this is a pretty easy versus battle. It's just one that kind of gets over and done with quickly. So that's it for now. More content coming soon.